Thomas Sorber is the next great superstar big man.
Said it, I'm golden. Told you I'm shining. Had to break through. Plan perfect timing. Giving no hands. Go get it. Radix the ruler. Can't with them peasants.
The Miami Heat picked 20th overall in the upcoming 2025 NBA draft. And so far in our draft series, I've discussed Liam McNeely, Rasheed Fleming, Noah Asenge, Will Riley, Nick Clifford, Walter Clayton Jr., Cedric Howard, Nolan Torrey, Ben Saab, Jay Richardson, Carter Bryant, and now Thomas Sorber. I want to give a shout out to the exactly 2 people that recommended that I talk about him. So make sure to leave your comments down below for who you want me to talk about next. Now, I think the reason that not too many Heat fans were interested in Thomas Sorber is because he's a non-spacing big man. Of course, we all love Khalil Ware, so there's not a direct need for a starting center. But let me be the first to tell you, Thomas Sorber is so damn skilled. He also has some great size to him. At the NBA Combine, his official measurements came in at 6'9" without shoes. So that 6'10" height that we heard about all college is probably pretty accurate. But then it's his wingspan that really gets me excited because he was tied for the second longest wingspan in the entire NBA Draft Combine with a 7'6" wingspan. 6'9" without shoes with a 7'6" wingspan. That is insane. And he was only second behind K-Man Malawach, the freak from Duke, who's literally over 7 feet tall. So it makes sense that he has a higher wingspan. So yeah, Thomas Sorber is a bit of a physical freak himself. He also weighed 262 pounds. So he is a grown-ass man, although he is only 19 years old. And let me point out that Thomas Sorber also weighed about 10 pounds more than Malawach, who is, again, over 7 feet tall. So this is a grown man and just a 17-year-old's body. He did play 1 season at Georgetown, which, if you're not familiar, Georgetown is the premier school for superstar big man. You've had Dikembe Mutombo, you've had Patrick Ewing, and then you've had all of our favorites, Alonzo Mourning. So it really makes you wonder if Zoe is up there in the Heat front offices speaking to Pat and Andy and Adam Simon saying, hey, we should take another look at this Thomas Sorber, because he really did have a great freshman season at Georgetown where he averaged about 15 points per game, 9 rebounds, over 2 assists, shot 53% from the field, and only 16% from 3 on 1.5 attempts. So he was shooting them, but obviously that's not a great clip at all. But I should note that his free throw percentage was 72% on a little over 4 attempts, which is very, very good. The other important thing about these numbers is he only played 24 games because on February 15th, he had a foot injury that actually required surgery. And I read that that surgery could take about 4 to 6 weeks for him to officially recover. So he should be okay now. But that injury still kept him out of a lot of the combine stuff and other workouts this summer. So there is some mysteries surrounding him, which is why I do think he dropped a little bit in these mock drafts. Most of the publications have him going around right where the Miami Heat pick. CBS Sports had him at number 23. And then NBA Draft.net had him way higher at the end of the lottery, number 14. But then Bleach Report at number 23, The Ringer at number 22, Yahoo at 26, and Tankathon at number 19. So he is a guy whose injury kind of pushed him back right around with the range where the Heat pick at number 20. As far as some of the player comps that I've seen, there's a wide variety of them, which is interesting because the first one I saw was Roy Hibbert, which another Georgetown big, so maybe that's the only reason we got this comparison. But obviously, Roy Hibbert was a decent player for about 2 seasons. But as a Heat fan, I know that guy as a trash can with legs. He was terrible. They invented this verticality rule so he could get away with hacking LeBron, and I hated it. And I didn't like Roy Hibbert back then. Although he seems like a very great guy now. He has his own YouTube channel and everything. And he was a good player for 2 years. Very good rim protecting center. Okay rebounder. But the next comparison that I saw for Sorber was Onyeka Okongwu, who I really do like. Of course, the big man from the Atlanta Hawks. And when he was coming into the NBA, I saw some Bam Adebayo comparisons. And that's kind of where I always liked Okongwu because of that. Because he is a very mobile center, especially defensively, which is the opposite of Roy Hibbert, who's just kind of like a rim protecting big. So there's some big differences there. But then the next 2 guys that I saw compared to Thomas Sorber was Jonas Valanciunas and Jusuf Nurkic, who are mostly offensive bigs. They can both pass the ball a little bit, of course, excellent rebounders, but they had very good footwork inside and were some very great offensive players, which Thomas Sorber can do. We'll get into that. But those guys are completely different than Okongwu and Roy Hibbert, who were defenders. That's why the one comparison I did see that, in my opinion, based on my research and film, that I do think is the best comparison for Thomas Sorber is Al Horford. You're talking about a guy who is a very great interior defender, excellent rebounder, high IQ, can pass the ball out of the post, but also has the ability to stretch the floor a little bit. Al Horford didn't when he was coming into the league, and neither was Thomas Sorber. We just saw his bad three-point percentages, but he certainly has the mechanics, I think, to have a lot of potential as a shooter, which, of course, Al Horford sort of developed as he went on throughout his career. So that's my favorite comparison out of the weird mix that we saw, but that just kind of gives you a general idea that Thomas Sorber can do everything. And the strengths and weaknesses will tell you that. We're going to go ahead and read the ones that Kevin O'Connor put in his Yahoo article, but I'll share my thoughts based off my independent research and film study as well. The first strength that they have listed is his at-rim finishing. It says that Sorber is a throwback big with soft hands, good touch, and power finishing when he needs it. He's extremely strong and physical, so he does a good job of stealing defenders and keeping the ball high. These are all very great skills. When you're watching his highlights, you can see he has a lot of post work. That's his next strength we'll get into. That's sort of the old school game that they're referencing, but it's his hands that really impressed me. I think that's an underrated thing when you talk about a lot of these big men, because there's a lot of guys that are tall, but they can't catch the ball. You watch Rudy Gobert, he has a lot of problems offensively, but his hands are one of them. I was watching the Grizzlies in the playoffs. They probably would have won a series if Zach Edey had hands. He's 7'4", but he can't catch a ball, can't get a rebound, can't finish a lob. As a Heat fan, the one guy I always go to is Joel Anthony. I love the Warden, I really do. But he couldn't do anything. I used to call him Mr. Brick because he had bricks for hands. That's not the case with Thomas Sorber. Has great hands, great touch. Same thing we've been saying about Khalil Ware all season, where he got that little push shot in the lane. And then, of course, also power finishing. He uses his frame to finish in the paint. Kind of reminds me of Hassan Whiteside in that way. There are some other comparisons between those two, which we will get into. The next strength that we have here is his post game. He finishes with jump hooks, floaters, and other touch passes, which come naturally to him, even when he's being guarded by an opposing big man. It says he has smooth footwork, and he can continue to progress into more of a low and high post hub. The jump hook part is really the one that compares me to Whiteside. Part of the reason that I love Whiteside compared to a lot of Heat fans is because I sort of blame Spo for not giving him as much touches as he deserved, because I think Whiteside had a very nice post game. And I know that's coming back a little bit, but when in Whiteside's era with the Heat, there was no more post game. Like, that was completely eliminated, and that's probably why Spo didn't go to it. But I think Whiteside had very great footwork and touch in that area. He always had that little push shot in the lane. And Thomas Sorber, I think, is even better than that. His footwork is so damn good, and he has such a great touch that I do think he can be a great scorer in this league. It also mentions that he can be a bit of a low and high post hub to sort of operate in the same areas that Nikola Jokic does. I'm not comparing him to Jokic, just in the spots in which they operate on the courts, and that is something that Hassan Whiteside could not do. I mean, Thomas Sorber averaged like 2.6 assists, 2.4 assists, in college. Hassan Whiteside's career high with the Heat was like 2 assists. That was Sorber's average. So he definitely has a great vision, and it even mentions that he can do those little touch passes when he gets the ball. The next strength they actually have listed is his passing. Says he has a high offensive IQ. I noticed that the ball never sticks when he gets it. If he does get the ball on the post, and if he's cooking down there, which he has the capability of doing, he has the counter to pass out of a double team. And he can also throw the outlet on a fast break, which, of course, that was Kevin Love's thing. Kevin Love will probably be on the Heat still next year. I just don't necessarily anticipate him to play that much. So at least you got Thomas Sorber that can provide that rebounding and outlet passing that Kevin Love did. And I do think Love could be a great mentor for Sorber, because they had similar skills coming into the league. I mean, Kevin Love wasn't the sniper that he turned into be when he was a rookie coming out of UCLA. So I do think Kevin Love could be a great mentor for Sorber in that way. But when you're watching Sorber play, he has that high basketball IQ. Even though he's a bit of a post player, you're likely not going to get a lot of post touches as a rookie in the league. He has the IQ to do other things out there and really get the other guys involved. And that's probably my favorite thing about Sorber. Next, it does mention his shooting upside. It says he has a great touch on those hooks and floaters. Also shoots 72% from the free throw line, which of course is the best sign of a guy potentially turning into a great shooter because it shows he has the proper mechanics. I do think that Sorber has a really nice face-up game, has that little jab step, the mellow jab step, pull-up midi. Not to compare Sorber to Jokic and Carmelo Anthony in the same video, but you get what I'm saying. He does have that face-up game, which could really help open up the rest of his game. And then the last strength that they have listed is his interior defense. He's a classic drop big man. He alters shots at the rim with good verticality. That part I don't love. I don't think drop coverage works a lot in today's NBA. That's the type of coverage that Brook Lopez plays. And nowadays, almost every big man can shoot. So when you're sort of dropping back in the lane, I feel like you give up too many open looks on the perimeter. But it's still very important to have a guy that can alter shots inside. Because as much as today's NBA is shooting threes, it's also getting to the rim, right? That's what the analytics say. Get to the rim, shoot threes. And before Khalil Ware, the Heat really had no rim deterrence. Bam Adebayo is not really a shot blocker, and a lot of times he's guarding players on the perimeter, so the paint is just, free run for whoever wants to get in there. So now having a guy like Khalil Ware in there, and then a Thomas Sorber to back him up, to use that 7'6" wingspan to alter shots, I do think that's something that could be really incredible for this Heat's defense. And then best of all, it literally says that he tries hard. That was like his best, or not his best asset defensively, but it's one of the skills that he possesses. I think effort is kind of a skill. That's not a question with Thomas Sorber. There's a ton of second efforts with him, even whether it's getting the rebound after blocking a shot or altering a shot. He never stops moving, and that kind of motor is the complete opposite of what we heard about Khalil Ware coming into the NBA. Not that I think Ware has motor issues. For the most part, I think he was pretty good his rookie season, but there was times where you really questioned whether he knew where he was at on the court or if he was given that extra second or third effort. You don't have those questions with Thomas Sorber because I do think he has a higher defensive IQ than Khalil Ware as well. He also uses that long wingspan to intercept passes, which is very good for starting some fast breaks. Going into the weaknesses now, the top one that it does say is his perimeter quickness. A lot of time he gets burned when pulling out to the perimeter. So that's kind of what we always see about Rudy Gobert, what I always make fun of him for. He's not going to be Bam Adebayo out there. I actually think Khalil Ware held his own multiple times when on the perimeter, but both of those guys have superior lateral quickness to Thomas Sorber. So you're not going to want him out there on an island. You're not going to want to switch everything when you're out there and get him guarding Jalen Brunson because that would just be baby food and Brunson would be able to get right to the rim. So you want to make sure that you're playing Sorber out there with a Davion Mitchell or Bam Adebayo, guys that can cover the perimeter. And if those guys happen to get beat, well, now you got Thomas Sorber standing in the paint, ready to swat any shot away. So you could really plug that final hole in this Heat's defense, which is that rim deterrence. So still, I don't care if he can't guard the perimeter. You got most guys who alter shots at the rim can't guard the perimeter. Like, that's what makes Bam Adebayo a rare breed, is that he can do both. So you need to get a shot blocker. I'm not mad that he can't guard point guards. The next weakness that they have listed is his athleticism. I noticed that too. When you're watching a lot of the film, he'll do these great moves to get into the lane, and he'll look like he'll do a reverse dunk to, posterize someone. And then it's like a little rim grazer. He really doesn't get up too high, but I'm not that concerned because defensively, you got a 7'6" wingspan. How high do you really need to jump? I'm not too concerned with his athleticism. He has his size, and he knows how to leverage that size to do what he needs to do defensively and offensively. So I'm not super concerned that he's not a high flyer. I am a little bit concerned about his pick and roll finishing, which is his next weakness. It says that he only finished 50% of his shots when rolling to the baskets out of off-ball screens, often being forced to finish below the rim after putting the ball on the floor, because most of the time I'm watching him play, he scores on ball. The reasons those are concerns to me, because of course, coming into the league, he's going to be more of a role player than he was at Georgetown, where he had the ball most of the time, had a super high usage rate. So if you're not getting those post touches with the Miami Heat, which we know he's not going to get a lot of, we saw how that affected Jaime Jaquez because Jaime was a post player. And then when you don't get those touches, you're forced to do other things. And Jaime kind of had a hard time adjusting the sophomore season. So if Thomas Sorber can't adjust if he can't become a pick and roll scorer, if he can't be a lob finisher, then maybe his offensive game will end up being pretty limited, at least early on. But I'm not super concerned about that because he is only 19 compared to Jaime Jaquez, who's a 4-year college guy. And even if Sorber is not a scorer in this league, he will be a great defender. So I don't have a lot of those same concerns with Sorber as I did with Jaime Jaquez. The final weakness that they have listed is his injury history. Of course, anytime you take a big man with a foot injury at 19, that's not what you want to hear. Immediately, I think of Greg Oden, but we'll see. Sorber was limited in his draft workouts and combine, so there won't be a ton of film of him leading up to the draft. But at pick 20, it might be a good place to take a risk. If it works out, great. You got an absolute steal of a guy who should have been drafted higher. If not, you wasted the 20th pick in the draft. Or you trade him because he's only 19. So I think he will have some trade value for a while. That being said, as far as his fit on the Miami Heat, I absolutely love it. Of course, I'm concerned how much he can contribute as a role player offensively because he does have a bit of that old school game. But, the game is kind of transitioning away from, the small ball anyways. We're going back to big guys. So put Thomas Sorber out there, a guy who can finally abuse a mismatch. If these other teams want to go small, switch everything. You put Thomas Sorber on him and just punish them, man. How many times we seen Bam Adebayo have a small guy on him and he just kicks it out? He can't attack that. Khalil Ware does an okay job of that. But I don't know. I like the post, man. It's like just because Thomas Sorber, is a rookie doesn't mean you can't feed him a little bit. I don't know. I'd kind of like to see the Heat get him and maybe actually run a couple of sets for him a game. I don't think that's too much to ask for, especially since today's game, there's a lot of those two big man lineups. You can play Sorber next to a guy like Bam or Khalil Ware because those guys can stretch the floor at least a little bit. But the main reason I like Sorber is because I think he has a ton of potential offensively and defensively. Defensively is pretty clear as an interior shot blocker, 7'6" wingspan, what's not to like. And offensively, even if he doesn't get those post touches that I hope he gets right away, as he gets older and develops some more of his skill, I think he can get those touches, and then maybe he can be a guy who, I'm going to compare him to Joel Embiid, but you still see guys out there that can operate in the post like Joel Embiid. If you have the footwork, why not? Why the hell not? But I like him because I think that he would actually play a lot on this team right now as a backup center. I do think he can do that because I know Khalil Ware didn't get a lot of run early in his rookie season, but I think Ware had a little bit of a lower IQ. He had a little bit of a skinnier frame, so he couldn't guard everybody out there. But you don't have those concerns with Thomas Sorber. He's a high-effort guy, has the body right now, and just the offensive and defensive IQ to play right away. So I think there's a defined role as a backup center immediately, and for that reason, I really do like him as a prospect for the Miami Heat. But let me know what y'all think down in the comments below. What do you think Thomas Sorber's ceiling is in the NBA? I'm very curious to hear what y'all think. Make sure to like the video and subscribe because your support is greatly appreciated. That being said, I'll see you on the next video. So peace out, everyone.
Look, pull up in your city, tryna get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. This homegrown bitch don't offend me.